Jennifer from Flux. Welcome to week 1 of the 2019 Flux Holiday Crochet Along. This is one of my favorite projects of the entire year when we come together at the end of the year and make a holiday themed project and make it together. We are making this year, I'm so excited about this project. I've had so many requests in the past for an advent calendar. We are making the Merry Little Advent Calendar. This is a pretty holiday snowy scene, and I've crocheted a background, and all these little things will button and unbutton from our calendar. So it's not like a traditional calendar in the sense, but each one of these has a one round item on here, and each day, as each day you get closer to the holiday, you will button your little item onto there until it's entirely filled up. Now, I have a little dowel rod here, and it hangs on the wall, and each day you might put there are gifts with little bows on them. There are heart and circle ornaments for the tree. There is a gold star on the top for the last day, and there are snowflakes. So 25 pieces in all. And we're going to start by making the base, and then we're going to do the tree. We're going to learn how to do all these shapes. We're going to learn how to assemble it. And finally, one of my favorite things about this project is we're going to be making one of the weeks of the crochet along. We're going to be making a drawstring storage bag. So you can put all of these little items inside, and then each day you can pull one out of your bag and attach it to your picture. So this is a really special project. I spent lots of time planning this project. I've had this idea for quite some time, and I'm so excited to share it with all of you. Like I said, there's 25 pieces, and it kind of culminates with the gold star at the top, okay? So let's go through our schedule a little bit. For week 1, just today, we're not getting into any tutorial. We're going to talk about the intro of the project, which I kind of gave an overview just now, and the supplies. So in just a moment, I'm going to lay out all the supplies you need, and we're going to go through each one and talk about them. For week 2, we're going to learn how to crochet this base. See this base here? It's a snowy ground, a blue sky, and we're going to put this nice little edging on it to kind of frame it like a picture. For week 3 of our crochet along, we're going to learn how to do this green tree. It's just a basic triangle. I made it very simple. All of this is very simple with simple stitches. And we're going to learn how to add a little snow to our tree. For week 4, we're going to get into all the shapes. So we're going to be making squares for our packages. We're going to be making a 6-point snowflake. We're going to be making a heart. We're going to be making circles for our ornaments, and we're going to be making a star for the top of our tree. Every single one of these shapes is achieved in just one round, and because they're made in the round, each one of them, like when I took this heart off, has a hole in the center where you create that ring, and it allows you to button it to your advent calendar. Okay? And then for week 5, we're going to make our storage bag. So we'll make all these shapes, then we'll learn how to make the bag so you can keep them all together. And when you store this for the year, it'll keep everything in one spot. And then for week 6, we're going to have all these parts, and we're going to learn how to attach our tree to our base, put our dowel rod on, add some trim if needed, learn how to put the hanger up top, sew all the buttons on so we can attach our pieces, and so forth. So this is a lot longer than some of our other crochet alongs, but it has lots of different pieces. So this year we're going to be working on this project through November and into December. It'll kind of culminate right before the holiday. And if you celebrate Christmas, those of you who celebrate Christmas may be familiar with the concept of an advent calendar. So each day, you put a different shape on, and it culminates on Christmas Day with your gold star, okay? So we're going to be making all the pieces as we go along. Now, if you don't get yours done in time to use it as an advent calendar this year, it'll be all ready to go for next year, and you can gift one as well if you like. So we're going to be using very easy to find yarn, very simple materials, many of which I already had on hand, and you can kind of use up some odds and ends like these ribbons and things like that. And then we're going to just put it all together. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And as you make your project, be sure and use the hashtag FiberFluxCal to share your work and join our 2 groups, the Ravelry group and the Facebook group. That's our huge community of makers that are all working on these projects together. So without further ado, let's jump right into the supplies so you know exactly what you need for this project. For this project, you're going to need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, a ruler or tape measure is super helpful to measure as you go along. You're also going to need some small buttons, 25 of them. Now, these are buttons that come, if you see them at the craft store, usually as a set. They're pretty small, as you can see in my hand. You can get them in like sets of 4, sets of 5. Some of these, like this green one and this pinky purpley one, were part of clothing. You know, when you get clothing, they give you a spare button, so those will work too. It's a great way to kind of recycle and repurpose things. But I kind of corresponded the colors of my button to what I'm going to be buttoning it to. We're going to be using these for each component. Each day, when you add a piece to your advent calendar, you'll button it on with your buttons. So, for example, the white snowflakes that we'll be creating, I pulled some white buttons for that. The blue, I do know my colors, I promise. The blue packages that will sit under the tree, I grabbed some blue buttons for those, etc. So you'll need 25 small buttons, and it's a great way to use up some extra buttons too, by the way. And because they're so small, the opening of each piece that we'll be making, the hole is small, so you'll need a small button. However, that poses a challenge because of your tapestry needle is much too large to go through, so you'll also need a needle and thread. We're going to be traditionally kind of sewing the buttons onto our piece. So I just grabbed one color, but you'll want to match it to whatever button that you're doing, and a needle. Now, on that note of attaching things, you can use a tapestry needle and a matching pair of yarn, piece of yarn to sew your pieces on to the base and together, or you can hot glue them. So I grabbed this too just to show you, but you can sew them or hot glue them. I'm going to be hot gluing some of my pieces on. For example, I'm going to be gluing the tree onto the base. And some other things. Now, the little pieces will be buttoning on, like I mentioned before, but if you are hot gluing, you'll also need a couple of hot glue sticks. Would be good to have on hand. Now, to hang your advent calendar up, you're also going to need a dowel rod. Now, mine is very, very long, and I'll be cutting it to fit. But you can also use an old knitting needle. You could use, if yours is narrower, you could use a chopstick or something like that. But just the dowel rod is also, you could paint it as well. So it's totally up to you. Now, I also have a scrap piece of ribbon here that I grabbed that looked kind of festive. And I'm going to be using that for the drawstring of the little pouch that we'll be storing all of our pieces in. You could use a piece of yarn, you could crochet a chain, but I thought that this yarn would be really pretty and it would match this other gold that I have here. This is some gold cord. I wanted the star at the top of the tree to really stand out, and I happen to have some of this on hand. If you don't, you can use, yarn is actually called gold. You can make yours with the yarn, but I'm going to make mine with some gold cording that I just happen to have, just enough to make a star, and it'll kind of match my drawstring. And on that note, this is a really customizable project, so if you have any little extras, like I have some bells, you can kind of put bells along the bottom. Here's a little scrap piece of pom-pom ribbon you could put as a trimming, some green rickrack, whatever you have on hand. You can really embellish this as much as you like. You could add additional buttons to kind of make little button snowflakes, etc. So let me kind of scoot all this stuff over, and we're going to now talk about the yarn. Now, the yarn that we'll be using, I picked a really easy yarn. It's Red Heart Super Saver, and we're going to be using the Super Saver in gold, which is shown here. This is the Patty Green. This is blue. It's just called blue. Cherry Red, and Aran. Now, it comes in, I chose this yarn because I use this a lot. It comes in tons and tons of colors. It has a smooth strand. It's easy to work with, and it doesn't come in dye lots. This is also a wonderful project if you want to use up some scraps. Now, I picked more of a traditional holiday palette. You can choose a pastel palette. You could go neon. You could go kind of retro and do like turquoise. Anything. Really, it's totally up to you and whatever your holiday decor or your home or whatever look you're trying to go after. Also, we're going to be using a 6mm J crochet hook. Now, if you want to substitute yarn, let's look at the yarn label here. Look for a 4 medium on the yarn weight scale, and any yarn that recommends a 5.5mm I crochet hook will be just fine, even though we are using the 6mm J hook. If you stick with these metrics on the yarn label, you'll be just fine. Now, if you do go with the I hook, just know that it'll sort of scale everything down a little bit, okay? Before we depart and move on to next week, where we will actually be starting the project, this will give you a whole week to kind of pull all of this fun stuff together, go through your buttons, go through your extras. But I wanted to also mention that when you want to share your work, be sure and use the hashtag FiberFluxCal, and I'll put that above. And a lot of people share their yarn choices, they'll share some of the stuff they're using. And we also have two wonderful communities. One is a Ravelry group and one is a Facebook group. I'll put both links below. The Facebook group is pretty new. We started it with our fall crochet along and it's grown very quickly. So I'm really excited about that. So these are two wonderful communities where you can show off pictures, you can ask questions. There's a lot of people who've been crocheting for a long time if you have a question or need help. So hop on over to those groups as well. So next week, we will be starting with the bottom part, the base of our advent calendar. The following week, we'll work the tree in the green. Then we're going to start making all the little components that go all over it. And we're going to just kind of move on from there. After that, we'll make the cute little pouch to store everything in. Then we'll start putting it all together and assembling everything. So this is a really fun, it's a little bit longer than some of our other holiday crochet alongs, but it's going to be a really fun one and lots of different things that we're doing each week. And we're going to really be tackling it piece by piece by piece. And it's not a huge project, but it has a lot of parts to it. So I thought it would be fun to break it down. And by the end of the season, when we're at the holidays, you'll have this beautiful advent calendar you can hang up and you can use in the years to come. So I will see you next week for week 2. We're going to jump right in. So gather up everything you need this week, and I will see you next week for week 2 of our holiday crochet along. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and hit that subscribe button to get all the latest FiberFlux video updates. Thanks again.